Playing with bees. I remember early summer mornings when my sister Ann and I would hurry outside while the dew was still on the grass and climb up the steep bank into the road that ran by our house. The road would be covered with clover in full bloom, and the bumblebees and honeybees would be busily buzzing from blossom to blossom. This was our video game. Ann and I would have our bee traps, two small syrup jar lids. We would sneak up and catch a bee between the lids, then shake the lids for several seconds to make the bee good and mad. The reward came when we held the lid up to our ear and listened to the buzzing sound. Wow, what fun! This was entertainment for us kids, but I guess it was worth the risk because we kept doing it. Now that I am older, I wouldn't dare do such a thing because I now have a phobia of bees. I'm scared to death of them. And yellow jackets in the plum thicket. There was a plum thicket just down the road from the cabin where we lived, and there beside a big rock, Ann and I made a playhouse. Oh, it was a great spot for a playhouse. We began by pulling weeds, and I could see things actually starting to take shape as we worked. I guess I was just too busy fixing the place up to notice the yellow jackets buzzing around, flying in and out of a hole in the ground at one end of the big rock. But I quickly took notice when I stepped right on their nest. I heard somebody screaming in pain, and it was me. In no time, those yellow jackets had covered me from head to toe. I ran past the house like a screaming wildcat, headed straight for the creek as fast as I could go. I jumped into the water trying to get some relief from the pain. We never played in the plum thicket again. For a long time I was terrified to even walk by that place. In July and August, during the sticky dog days of summer, the heat and humidity would become almost unbearable in the mountains. Inside of the cabin at night would be so humid and stuffy that I couldn't sleep. I remember lying in bed and listening to the katydids and crickets outside the window. A whippoorwill would call from a nearby tree, and the sound of an owl hooting over the hillside. As the night air began to cool down, these sounds would eventually serenade me to sleep. I recall when the mountains caught fire on Deadman's Branch. I watched from our cabin window at night as the fire burned upon the mountainside. Seeing the red and orange glow from the wildfire was kind of exciting and terrifying at the same time. I began worried when I overheard some of the grown-ups talking about how the fire might travel all the way down the mountainside and burn our house down. My sister Ann was terrified that this might happen because she had been burned very badly before. Thankfully, the men on the hollow joined together and dug a fire ring at the bottom of the hill. Then they started a fire and allowed it to burn back up the mountainside to meet the wildfire. This ended the threat of our homes burning down. While living on Deadman's Branch, we kids wanted to attend summer school, but Mom refused to let us go. We begged, but still could not convince her to let us go. Then one day, some people from the school came around signing up kids for summer school, and to our surprise, Mommy decided to let us go. We were shocked and delighted at the same time. I will never forget how much fun I had that year. The school was held in a small building, and us kids were allowed to go outside and collect all different kinds of leaves, which we got to spray paint on white paper, and so many wonderful little projects. I think I was about 7 years old at the time. Our first television. After years of waiting, we finally got electricity in our house on Deadman's Branch, and that paved the way for us getting our first television. My oldest brother, Mitchell, traded something for it, and I believe it was an old horse. I was so excited, even though the picture was so snowy that we could hardly discern what we were watching. We knew there had to be a way of getting a stronger signal for better television reception. Mitchell strung some of the older children up and down the mountain to hollow messages all the way to the top, where he would be turning the antenna, trying to locate the direction of the television station. I remember evenings when we would hurry home from school to watch Dark Shadows, a daytime drama about vampires, werewolves, and witches. I loved watching the Looney Tunes on Channel 5. Sunday evenings we would all gather in our living room to watch Bonanza and Gunsmoke. Times were lean. In the mountains of southeastern Kentucky could be very difficult at times. Most people made their living by farming, coal mining, root digging, and hunting. Life revolved around the home and families. My parents worked hard to raise us children. We were poor, but I didn't realize it at the time. I thought everyone was the same way because all the people I knew were like us. They didn't have much either. We didn't own a car and had to walk just about everywhere we went. My brother Alfred told of the times our mother hitchhiked from Dead Man's Branch to a community called Sassafras, every week a distance of about 10 miles, to wash clothes for our Uncle Nick and his wife Sylvania. Sometimes Mommy would pay Buffalo Reynolds a quarter to ride that taxi when she could afford it. My oldest sister, Mary Jane, said that toys were almost non-existent when she was a little girl. She said her dolls were made of corn shucks and the boys' toys were made by nailing can lids to a chunk of wood for tires. That was their toy trucks and cars. Mary Jane told of the time she and her sister Sharon found an old rubber doll in the creek. All the dolls they had were homemade, so they were very excited to find an actual store-bought doll, even though it had turned black from being out in the weather for so long. Mary Jane said she and her sister fought and squabbled over that doll because each wanted to claim it and neither wanted to share it. My family didn't have much, but we made the best of what we had. For the most part, I think we were happy children. Sometimes we would play in the creek catching water dogs and crawdads. I remember getting pinched several times by crawdads, and I must admit I was a little scared of those pinchers. Growing up, I remember my family moving around a lot. Mommy always said it was Daddy who wanted to move, but in reality, it was her. Before I was born, my family had even lived for a while in Fairborn, Ohio. For some reason, Mom was never satisfied with living in one place for very long. Swinging on the porch. When I was a child, every house and cabin had a front porch. It was one place that most families, including ours, loved to gather. It would be the front porch. The porch provided a way to escape from the sweltering heat of the cabin during the hot summer months. I have a very special memory of my brother Dale and me sitting on the porch, singing at the top of our lungs. We loved to sing old folk songs such as Barbara Allen, Patches, and many other songs I have forgotten over time. In the mountains, the front porch was where life happened. Homemade soda pop. The country store was a special place all kids loved to go. And us Thomas kids were no different. When I was a kid, a store meant one thing to me, a place to get pop and candy. But we didn't have the privilege of running to the store or restaurant every time one of us got a sweet tooth like kids do today. It was a rare occasion for us to be treated to a candy bar and a pop. Loving soda pop so much and not getting it as often as we liked led my brother Alfred to come up with his own recipe for soda pop. He would treat the rest of us kids to some whenever he got the opportunity to make it. His recipe was to mix coffee, baking soda, and sugar together to create his tasty drink that us kids love. Today they would probably call it cold coffee. And Christmas time. Christmas was my favorite time of the year. I remember sitting on the porch daydreaming about Christmas Day and all the exciting things that would be happening. Daddy would go into the woods and cut down either a pine or a cedar tree for us to decorate. The whole family would join in and decorate it with both handcrafted and store-bought ornaments. I can still remember watching the twinkling lights with awe, and how beautiful they were. I wanted to touch the flashing lights, but I knew better than to touch anything on the tree. Daddy would gather pine limbs and decorate the front porch, windows, and doors. Walking up to our front door gave one the sense of walking through a pine forest. The inside of our house usually smelled of cinnamon, because the cakes and pies my mom baked for Christmas dinner would always be decorated with cinnamon berries. And I will never forget the huge plate of delicious homemade fudge she would make. Christmas party at Delta Theta Tau. One of my fondest memories is of a Christmas party that was held at Delta Theta Tau School at Brinkley in Knott County, Kentucky. The school had 4 huge classrooms, with each room having 2 grades assigned to it. The first and second grades were assigned to one room, and third and fourth grades were assigned to another room, and so on. There was no lunchroom at the school, and all the kids were required to bring their own lunches. But on this particular Christmas, the school opened 2 of the huge classrooms for the Christmas party. The 2 rooms combined made an area as big as a gym. Then they put up a giant Christmas tree there. We were all very excited and knew it was going to be a wonderful Christmas party. We wanted our mother to attend the party with us, and at first she said no, but we continued to beg, and eventually she gave in and agreed to go. It turned out to be a wonderful little play, and Christmas carols were sung. They also gave all the kids gifts and a big bag of candy, fruit, and nuts. I loved my gifts. I got 2 outfits of clothes, gloves, and a toboggan, or boggin, as we call them.